Children are encouraged to walk or bike to school. Sometimes there's no other option. Children are still developing mentally and physically and do not have the experience and decision-making ability of adults. As a result, they sometimes make risky decisions when crossing the street, which is why we need crossing guards. According to the law, the placement and management of crossing guards is a responsibility of the local police department, but there's no statutory mandate on where they should be placed. Fortunately, while there aren't any statutory guidelines on where to place guards, there are guidance and policy actions that you can take. This film will review 3 key actions that you can take that will provide structure and support to your crossing guard post placement decisions. These key actions are developing a crossing guard policy with supporting criteria, communicating change, and lastly, carrying out an annual crossing guard post review.
The first thing we would suggest is to have a crossing guard placement policy with supporting criteria. Placing crossing guards, and especially changing crossing guard posts, can be difficult decisions that can come with politics and emotion. Obviously, it's not feasible to have a crossing guard at every corner. How do you decide where they are needed most? And how do you address parents and other community members about requests for crossing guard posts, or justify taking one away? We suggest you do it by taking emotion and any perception of arbitrariness out of the decision by having a policy and supporting criteria. There are different considerations that can be included in a policy. Several specific examples are cited in the New Jersey School Zone Design Guide. You should feel free to use them in their entirety or modify them to the needs of your community. Examples can be found on the New Jersey Safe Routes to School Resource Center's Crossing Guard webpage. When developing a policy and criteria, we suggest that a police representative, your municipal engineer or planner, and a school official be involved, since they all have a hand in assembling the data you may need, and they are impacted by the commissioning or decommissioning of posts.
For many crossings, the need for guards will seem obvious. When you have higher speeds, multiple lanes, a high volume of cars, turning movements, and higher traffic volumes, there is an obvious need for a crossing guard to help select or create gaps for children. In the same way, if there are no children and the streets are low volume and low speed, it may seem obvious that you don't need a crossing guard post. Having a policy and criteria to back up your decision is really helpful. There are some typical factors that are used in making crossing guard post decisions.
The age of students. Young children are a vulnerable population. The younger the student, the greater the need for a crossing guard's judgment in creating gaps in traffic. Safe gaps in traffic. Are the gaps in traffic long and frequent enough to allow safe crossing? The School Zone Design Guide provides information on gap assessment. The municipal engineer can help with the assessment, but the step-by-step formula provided in Chapter 4 of the Design Guide can be used by anyone. Speed of roadway. Speed data is easy to collect and is a common threshold for the need for guards. The faster people go, the less time they have to react to pedestrians, and the more serious the injuries in the event of a crash. Traffic volume. How busy is the road? The more cars you have, the fewer gaps you have. Your engineer may have or can conduct a traffic count study that documents roadway volumes.
Roadway width. The wider the road, the more exposure pedestrians have while crossing. Crossings with fewer and narrower travel lanes are safer for everyone. Turning movements. Intersections with a high volume of turning movements cause significant hazards for pedestrians. Often a motorist may be looking for an opportunity to turn instead of looking for pedestrians. Number of lanes. Multi-lane roads are statistically our most dangerous because they frequently are higher speed, higher volume, and have more conflict points. We recommend any school crossing on a multi-lane road have a crossing guard or guards. Crash history. Your police department will have crash data. If there is a history of crashes at a location, then that location should be looked at very closely. Between you your community engineer, and a school administrator, you should be able to put your hands on data for most, if not all, of these factors. We would strongly suggest you consider adding some or all of these criteria when you develop a crossing guard policy. You can either develop specific thresholds, or you can have a more general reference, such as you will consider all relevant data when commissioning or decommissioning a post.
Some other factors you might consider include sight distance. Sometimes a school crossing may have obstructions or may have reduced sight distance due to road characteristics such as hills or curves. Traffic control devices. The presence or absence of traffic control devices, including traffic signals, signs, and pavement markings, and their conditions should be considered. Attendance, boundary, walk zone, and distance of crossing post from the school. These factors determine the number of child pedestrians at any crossing. The closer you get to a school, the more likely it is that you will have a higher volume of children who want to cross the street. Student destinations. You want to be aware of the destinations where children congregate or that they may be drawn to, such as libraries, convenience stores, food venues, and after-school activity sites. Remember, the criteria we've discussed are examples of factors that you can consider when making crossing guard post decisions. You should sit down with your colleagues and discuss what makes sense in your community and what you feel comfortable with.
Make sure that if commissioning or decommissioning a post is being considered, that your colleagues are aware of the issue. After making a decision on a location, put together a memo with the reasons why a post is being commissioned or decommissioned as a formal record. In the case of decommissioning a post, the establishment of alternate routes should be communicated, particularly to those families affected by the change and to the school administration. Make sure your findings are discussed internally so that everyone is on the same page about the decision and it can be properly represented to parents, school administrators, the municipal council, and other community decision makers. Remember, if you find yourself having to discuss the reasons for changes to crossing guard posts with parents, try to do so sensitively. While your decisions will be based on rational factors, you're ultimately talking about an emotional issue, a parent's perception of their child's safety.
As a supervising officer, you may want to conduct an annual review of crossing guard posts. You're going to want to think about whether your limited resources are being deployed optimally. It's a good idea to sit down with the municipal engineer and a school administrator and share your thoughts and observations on current placement and whether there are any new factors to consider. One way to gather some of the information you need is through the crossing guard post review form and through application of your crossing post criteria to each post with a summary. During this review, you may want to talk about which posts are the most challenging and if there are any improvements that you and your partners can carry out or ask for. This would be the time to think about grant opportunities and whether there are any low-cost but easy improvements that could be made, such as signage or striping. You may also want to take this opportunity to review important factors with crossing guard personnel, provide feedback on job performance, and ensure guards are capable of handling their posts.
There are no formal guidelines on how to commission or decommission a post, but there are factors that can help you make a decision. If you adopt a policy, work with your community and colleagues, and add objective considerations to common sense and site-specific factors, you can feel confident in your decisions and respond intelligently to questions about crossing guard post placement or removal.
Resources that can help with these decisions can be found at the New Jersey Safe Routes to School Resource Center website. If you want to speak with someone, please feel free to call or email us. We know these decisions can be challenging, but if you have a policy and criteria, you can feel confident in your crossing guard post placement decisions. This program is supported by the New Jersey Department of Transportation and the New Jersey Division of Highway Traffic Safety with funding from the Federal Highway Administration. Additional funding is provided by the Municipal Excess Liability Joint Insurance Fund.